If peace feels wrong after divorce, if calm feels unsafe, selfish, or like you're waiting for something to fall apart, this episode is for you because that feeling isn't a warning sign. It's usually a signal that an old belief is being challenged. Welcome to Beyond Believing, the podcast for divorced Christian women who are done surviving and ready to thrive with the power of God's truth. I am Katie Ann, a certified life coach, single mom of 5, and I walk alongside divorced Christian women as they rebuild their lives with Him. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the identity beliefs that keep women stuck in guilt and self-sacrifice, why choosing yourself has been mislabeled as selfish when Scripture calls it stewardship, and how divorcing your old identity is the first step in preparing to receive what God has already promised. Let's dive in. Here's the false agreement that many women are still living under. If I choose myself, someone else is not being chosen. Love requires self-sacrifice, and peace means I'm neglecting someone. So when peace finally arrives, it feels wrong, not because peace is wrong, but because it violates an old identity. If peace feels wrong, this is usually why. The other day I sat down to work, and before I knew it, I startled myself awake by snoring. Now, I hadn't planned to fall asleep, but suddenly there it was. I call this snoring yourself awake because once you realize what just happened, you can't unrealize it. That's what it feels like when you wake up to a false agreement you've been living by. You weren't ignoring the truth. You were just operating on autopilot. And once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. This kind of awakening is not condemnation. And I want to say this clearly. Guilt is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's often evidence that an outdated rule is being challenged. That's not something to fear. It's something to pay attention to. Paul explains this process in Romans 12:2, when he says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." Renewal requires awareness. You cannot change what you've never noticed. And once a false agreement is exposed, peace will feel unfamiliar before it feels safe. And this is usually where women say things like, "I have to keep him informed about the kids," or "I'm just trying to help my kids have a relationship with their dad." Or maybe they're saying, "I don't want my kids to be the go-between." Now, those statements come from a loving place, but this is where responsibility and access often get confused. Helping your children does not require you to stay emotionally or conversationally available in ways that cost you peace. Stewardship is not over participation. So let me make this tangible. A calm, godly boundary can sound simply like this: "I'm not available for that conversation, but if it's about the kids, please email me." There's no anger or explanation. It's just stewardship. Now, Jesus gave himself fully, but he didn't abandon himself to prove his love. And he didn't neglect anyone in the process. And I can't think of a single person, believer or not, who would describe Jesus as selfish. Peace didn't make him disobedient. It made him clear. When you stop abandoning yourself, guilt often rises before it quiets, not because God is correcting you, but because your nervous system is adjusting to a new way of living. You're learning to separate absence from abandonment. And you're learning that choosing yourself is stewardship, not selfishness. This is exactly the work we do inside Selah Healing. We identify the false agreements that keep peace feeling unsafe, and we practice living aligned with God's truth, calmly, clearly, and without guilt. So if peace feels wrong right now, you don't need more willpower. You need a new agreement. If peace feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, hear this. Discomfort doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It often means you're doing something new. God's promises are sure, and the only thing that ever keep us from receiving them is believing that they aren't truly ours. You didn't abandon anyone. You stopped abandoning yourself. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Please leave a rating or review before you go. And if you know another woman rebuilding her life after divorce, share this episode with her. Until next time, remember this: God's promises for you are sure, and his peace is not the enemy, it's the invitation.